Hi, welcome to Transitions. I'm your host, Antoinette Zloty. We have a really interesting show set up for you today. And first up on the set is a good friend of mine, Loretta Kinamore-Obeng. And Loretta is going to share her personal story. Then I will be joined by Susan Everton, and she is with Safety Services Manitoba. And then finally, from Tons, I will be joined by Pam McConnell. So right now, we'll turn to yourself, and maybe you can share with me, because I don't know your full story about your transportation story, but you know, I know a little bit. So can you tell us where it started and how things evolved for you with driving?
Well, at the time when I was taking driver's lessons, I was, you know, sometimes it's rather difficult when a family member tries to teach you how to drive. You know, most of the time you get in an argument, you figure, oh, well, it's not really that important. And at the time, I guess I didn't really take it that serious, and I was teaching up north. So I figured I didn't need to learn how to drive, because every time I went somewhere, I'd walk. You know, so anyways, it was, you know, I didn't think it was, you know, really that important. But as you get older and you, you know, move back to the city, you realize, you know, it's a real inconvenience, because now you have to, you know, depend on somebody else to take you, or a lot of times, you know, you don't go out at night because you miss out on a lot of different activities that can take place at night. So this is, you know, why. And then, you know, people, you know, through the years have asked me, well, how come you don't learn how to drive? And I just, you know, kept putting it off and putting it off. And so anyways, so here I am, a senior now, and I still don't know how to drive. So,
but you do a lot of things, and you do a lot of things well. So in terms of your journey, like you haven't had a need to drive, because you're saying that you walked a lot when you were in northern Manitoba, which is a very healthy lifestyle, you know, to be walking. And but here, I guess it's more of an inconvenience, right, in terms of when the buses run and how often and so on.
And depending on other people, you know, like, I mean, sometimes if you want to go somewhere, you always have to depend on, you know, somebody else to take you, you know, so. But I mean, like, I tried, and I was always so nervous, so I figured, well, I'll just, you know, don't pursue it, you know, which I regret now. So, so it was really, you know, it was just one of those things. Because I mean, I'm the only one in my family that didn't drive, because my brother, we lived on a farm when I was young, and my brothers and sisters all learned how to, you know, drive the tractor. They'd, you know, go around in the fields and everything, you know. So I never did learn when I was, you know, because most people, they learn when they're teenagers or, you know, early 20s at least, you know, so.
So I'm hearing some regret in your voice, but yet your work in education didn't take you to an environment where driving was necessary. So now you're in an environment where driving may be beneficial. Can you see yourself maybe venturing into taking a course, or having a person who is qualified teach you how to drive as part of your own transportation history and learning, even as an older person, as a mature person?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I think I'm, you know, like, I'm still nervous, probably more nervous now than I was before, so I really can't see it happening. You know, like, I mean, but then, you know, stranger things have happened, but I just, you know, like, I just feel at this point where I just have to, you know, make up my mind that I'm going to do, you know, find other means of transportation.
Yeah, but I know some people who take a cab when they need to take a cab, and I suppose if you look at the cost of a vehicle versus the cost of maybe taking an occasional cab and scheduling things in such a way that you can get a ride from people that you know, I suppose it would work out. I for myself, I'm just so used to the vehicle and driving that I think that I need to do a little bit more like what you're doing. It's good for the environment too, to not be actually operating a vehicle for every single time you want to go somewhere. So
but then a lot of people find, if they don't drive, they don't have any independence either, because you have to, depend on other people. Like if you want to go somewhere and they don't want to go, so you got to depend on, somebody else to drive you. And, sometimes it's quite hard, difficult to find people that are, going to be available when you want to go somewhere, like if it's a medical appointment or some other situation, so.
Because just before we wrap up and switch over to hearing from Susan, you said that there are some medical appointments where you actually you're not allowed to get in a cab, to take a cab home by yourself?
Well, after certain medical procedures like, cataract surgery or certain surgeries, you're not allowed to go home by yourself, and you have to get somebody reliable, and you can't always take a cab because you got to sign a waiver, because that happened to me.
So it sounds to me then just that there are some positives with not driving and some not so positive, and we'll talk a little bit more. But for now, what we'll do is just take a little break, and all of us who are going to be on the show today will be back to talk together. So next up is Susan, and you hold the thought there about that, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Transitions. I have a special guest with me today, and her name is Susan Everton. Susan, tell us about the Mature Drivers Program.
The Mature Driver Workshop is an MPI initiative. It's a program developed partially by MPI, partially by Safety Services Manitoba. It's a 3-hour course where seniors go for free. There's no charge at all for this. They get a current Manitoba Driver's Handbook, and there's a PowerPoint presentation in a classroom setting, and we go over concerns seniors have with driving related to cognitive abilities to drive that may diminish, or physical parts of aging that may affect their driving ability. We go over rules of the road. We go over any concerns they have about driving, really. We also offer a free in-car road review that has no effect on their driver's license. So if they really want to know how their driving is, there's the chance to find out.
What I really like about it too, from what you told me before when we went on the road experience, and we'll show that film shortly, but what you said was that you will go to a community group and actually provide the instruction right there in their own environment. So they just need to book ahead.
Yes, as long as there's a group of about 15, at least 15 seniors that would like the course, if they call the office, the Safety Services office, they could normally arrange to have myself or another instructor out with our equipment. All we need is a blank wall to shine a projector on, and we can do the course.
And also you can go on a road review with individuals in their own cars,
in their own vehicle,
and book that separately. So let's cut right now then to that film that was taken when we went on a little drive around in the neighborhood. Okay, so Susan, tell me where you start when you go on a review with people.
Well, I would have the participant come out of the building or wherever we were meeting, and we would go to their vehicle, and I would ask them to just briefly walk around the vehicle and just be checking things like, do the tires appear to be okay? Are there any dents or dings that weren't there when you started? Does everything look all right with are the lights clear? Are the license plates clear, both front and back? If it's a very cold day like this, are the windshield wipers frozen to the window or are they movable? Are your mirrors clear? The same on this side and the rear license plate as well. Just show me how they normally sit in their vehicle. I would be wanting to see that they could put their right foot under the brake pedal comfortably. That way when their foot is on the gas and the brake, they won't be stretching to reach it. They'll be able to comfortably do those two maneuvers. They should be able to take either their left or right wrist and put it on top of their steering wheel. I'm approaching a four-way stop. So as I approach and slow down, and I'm checking to see if there's a sidewalk. There is not. So I can go past a stop sign and stop, even with the edge of the roadway here. Then check, it's my turn to go, and proceed. There is no cross traffic, there's no pedestrians. A four-way stop, there's a pedestrian. I'm looking for a sidewalk. There is one on the left, so I should stop before that point, so a pedestrian can walk straight across. I've done a full stop and then proceed, checking carefully. Sure, if I was in an unfamiliar area, I'd be checking how many lanes are here. I can see there's only one, so I'm just placing myself kind of in the center of it. Again, 50 speed limit. There is no sign that I saw, so I can assume. I'm scanning at least 10 to 12 seconds ahead of me, and I know I'm turning left further up. The road splits into two here, so I'm going to go into the left portion. Both lanes turn left here, which I wasn't aware of. So I can see the signage telling me that, so I can be in either lane to turn left. I have to be aware of where I'm going when I do turn though. I have a green light, so if there are no pedestrians crossing in my way, I can slow down enough to control my space when I turn. It's too late for me to stop for that yellow light, so I proceed through. There's no pedestrians, closest lane, straighten my car out and away I go.
So is it a good idea then to know ahead of time where you're going,
Yes.
what routes you're going to be taking?
Yes. The more you can drive ahead of where you're going, the safer you generally are, because it lets you make those decisions when you're not stressed and having to do it at the last moment.
Mm-hmm. Now we were just passing a school bus,
Yeah.
and some people get annoyed when they have to stop, but as soon as I see a school bus slowing down, I tend to slow down also.
Yes.
Is that?
You could, but if you see the yellow lights coming on top of the bus, that's the indicator that they're going to have the red lights on soon and going to be stopping and dealing with children getting on or off. It's good to be wary around school buses, so in all cases.
So if the car up ahead started to slow it, now the red lights are coming on, which should indicate that they're braking. Should you start braking as well, even
Sure.
though you're like 5 car lengths back?
Absolutely. The more smooth you can do your stops and starts from a gas consumption and brake usage point of view, it's good as well, but also for making for a very calm, smooth ride. Now here I know that I've got separate light systems. There is going to be an arrow for my left turn. I know that because the housing on that light is black, the one that we see on the left. That means there is an arrow there somewhere. It doesn't mean I'll get it, but there's one there somewhere. So that means I will have technically the right of way, but I still need to look for pedestrians that aren't obeying their don't walks or traffic that's not paying attention.
Yeah.
It
So
doesn't mean I have carte blanche. Like, is that
Right.
lady who's cold and wet going to pay attention? Okay, signaling left. And I'm going to leave my signal on. I'm noticing there's 2 left turn lanes. So I have to be aware that these drivers are also turning and watch my space when I turn.
Thanks for staying with Transitions as we talk about transportation and the different changes that we make as we become young adults and as we become mid adults and older adults. I would like you to meet Pam McConnell. Pam is with the TONS organization.
Transportation Options Network for Seniors.
Right, yes. So Pam, you're going to tell us a little bit about what that organization does and in Winnipeg and beyond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, we inform and educate Manitobans, older adults and their families that might be looking for them as well, their loved ones, about what the transportation options are that exist for people. And often the question is coming about because, you know, someone is suddenly facing perhaps not driving. So we look at all the different kinds of transportation options that are available. Yeah.
I see. So in the city of Winnipeg, transportation is a little bit more complex, and especially as we grow in size. Do you discuss anything about adaptations that people could make to a big city when they come from a rural area?
Not specifically that, but we certainly see a lot of people that end up leaving, say, a farm or something, and they're moving into rural into a rural urban center, but smaller than Winnipeg. Right. But so not so many of those kinds of questions, but we would be talking to anybody who is interested about what the options are. We'd be promoting transit, possibly handy transit and how you apply for handy transit. Volunteer drivers, that's the most common question I get. Where could I find a volunteer driver? So a whole variety of options. We look at even taxis. We're preparing for ride shares and Ubers and what that's going to look like, cycling, you name it.
So you give people the information as to where they can go and access these different options, and then it's up to them to then go and seek them out?
Well,
is that it?
Oftentimes the main thing I get calls about are for someone who needs a volunteer driver. They're no longer driving and they need to get somewhere. So that's the number one thing. And at the time I'm talking to the family member or the older adult, I'm trying to find out what their situation is, and then from there determining what would make sense, what is where they're living that you could offer to them. And as I said, we work with all the transportation providers to try them to be more senior friendly and possibly more friendly in terms of other people of all ages that might have a disability or require some extra assistance.
So let's say an individual needed to have an orientation to transit. Is that provided as on a regular basis, like a schedule basis, or do you have to book that with transit, Winnipeg Transit?
Well, you actually can even get it as an individual person, but they try to book it for groups. But there is someone there full-time who is a transit travel trainer. And but when you have a group, they actually bring a bus, and you can actually practice loading onto the bus. And if you are in a wheelchair, the buses are accessible, so you can have them lower the ramp. You can use the space at the front and try hooking in your wheelchair for the first time when the bus isn't full, rather than trying to do it when it's a full bus and you're using it for the first time. So that gives you an opportunity to try some of those things out. So we've worked with transit around developing that program. We've also are on the Handy Transit Advisory Board, so we work with them around different issues and things that come up that we hear about from seniors. And we work with the taxi cab industry. We have in the past around developing training for taxi drivers around persons who are disabled and so on, to be able to help them. And the disability community was also involved with that.
I see.
Yeah.
Now we have a special climate here in Winnipeg, which is actually pretty I guess, can be pretty severe. Like when you mention about people in wheelchairs using the buses and so on,
Yeah.
I guess the thing is that you pretty well have to pick your option dependent on the weather, the situation, and so on. Like I understand that some seniors centers do try to recruit and train their own volunteers as well. So if you get connected with a senior center in the area, then that might help as well. Is that correct?
That's true.
Yeah?
That is true. Unfortunately, we don't have the whole city covered, but it is true.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Well, that's really good. I just wonder, could you tell me a little bit about the percentage of people? Do you have any information about the, or maybe not, a percentage of older people who drive, or is that number, the numbers are increasing though, eh?
They are increasing. So the older adults are the fastest growing portion of our population, that's for sure. And so I have some general stats from Canada.
just
We've got
maybe-
roughly 2.7 million drivers that are 65 years of age or older. So, and that's going to increase as the baby boomers, come along. That's only going to increase. So we're a big segment of the population that's on the, on the roads for sure.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your information and your knowledge, and being available also for other people to contact you and get more information. Everything will be posted in terms of where to contact you. And now what I'd like to do is just take a quick break, and then all of us will get back together and have a little group chat. So stay with us, folks.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Transitions. Well, we've had a very interesting day so far, and what I'd like to do is for us to talk a little bit more about the past and actually the present, and what each of us see as maybe even one thing that we'd like to see in the future in terms of transportation that would help mature drivers with transitions. So maybe I could start with you. What do you think?
Well, given that I said earlier that the most common reason I get a phone call is someone looking for a volunteer driver, I would love to see that in the city of Winnipeg that the criminal record checks and vulnerable person checks that are required to become a volunteer are free or a much reduced price. At the moment, it's cost prohibitive for many people to become a volunteer. It's almost $200, and then they're going to volunteer. So that's, if I could pick one thing, it would be to figure out some way that the Winnipeg police could figure out how to do this for less money, perhaps using a retired police officer who's got the right to do the search or something.
I see. Thank you. That's very interesting. I didn't know about that. And now,
Okay,
how
so
about
when
yourself?
you're talking about volunteer drivers, are you talking about taking them to medical appointments or grocery shopping or what?
Absolutely anything. It could. The most common request is to get to a doctor's appointment, but also people need to socialize. They need to be able to go out and have a coffee and enjoy life.
Instead of being so isolated in their homes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So, what would you like to see for the future? What one main thing?
Well, okay. I just, maybe we could just, pick up on, what you said and just sort of try to extend, the transportation system to, people that are in some areas of the city, they just have limited transportation. Like they have the bus service that runs till 7 o'clock at night. So what do you do after 7? You don't go out or whatever. So, I think they could say in some cases they could extend it, for longer hours so people would have a chance to get out past 7. because in our neighborhood that's the case, you know, and that's you know, pretty early. So
That is early. And I would talk to my counselor and say, you know, we've got seniors living here and we all have to be home by 7 because the bus doesn't run past then.
yeah,
Then,
so
yeah,
so that's you know, an important issue for
Issue.
some people.
Absolutely.
Thank
So-
you. Thanks. That's very significant. And how about yourself?
Well, I'd like to see the seniors who are still driving, actively driving. I wish more of them would recognize the value of education while they are driving, and learning whether or not they actually are doing it properly, and understanding when they may have to move along and get some other services from other places, because driving will no longer be a valid option for them, which is hard for a lot of people.
And especially in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, we have a number of people who were farmers, and literally at 10 years of age, they were driving the farm truck or the tractor. And oftentimes, they didn't even have to write a test to get their license.
That's right.
They didn't even show up. There was no test involved at all, which is shocking nowadays that we have graduated licenses and how long that takes. But they may never have learned some of the proper things. So I would really agree with you.
And I wish more people would understand that the information is there if they go and look for it, especially if they're internet literate. If they're on the computer, they can go to MPI's website and look at the handbook for free. You know, if they don't have an access to a program, but the programs are there. So,
Well, I guess if I had to look at something in terms of future, I guess there are a number of things that I'd definitely like to see for transportation, and this would be one of them would be an all-you-can-ride fee for seniors instead of having to transfer at a certain time, because you can't transfer without too much time in between. So, so that you can go from A to B to C right throughout the day for a set amount. And the other thing I wonder about is privately owned vehicles, small, like minibuses. In the Caribbean, it's very, very common to see that, where they're regulated. There are regulations that they're supposed to be following, so even if they're regulations, they still have to have somebody watching to make sure that they are following the regulations. But you know, we do rely on the public system, and it's good. I like public systems, but sometimes we need to also look at some newer ways to deliver services. So I definitely am interested in that all-you-can-ride
And,
fee. Yeah, one fee a day for all-you-can-ride if
interesting.
you're over 65.
Maybe we could start a seniors rideshare program.
A rideshare program?
Yeah,
As-
like Uber or Lyft, but it would be something, you know, more geared towards seniors, and then the same idea that, you know, maybe a few people want to go to, say St.
yeah.
Patel Mall, and you know, you would put
Yeah.
3 people in the car.
Car. You're
live
talking
in
about
this-
you're talking about a riding co-op, and I think
Yes.
that we'll end with that, because we're going to absolutely run out of time. But it seems like this is a topic that is worth some more time on and on to talk about transportation and ideas, and we'll have to continue to chat about this. So thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming
Antoinette.
in, and I
Thank you
think
for having
we've
us.
got some ideas to go forward with.
thank you,
Thank you.
Antoinette.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
having
Please visit our website and check out our previous shows and upcoming shows, and join us again on Transitions.